This is the Tombigbee Tales, and I'm your host, Shannon Evans. I write about a small town in northeast Mississippi called Columbus. Sometimes I write about the rest of the state. Today I have with me a candidate for the mayoral race, Darren Leach. I don't know if you want to be introduced as Reverend, Pastor, or just Darren.
Darren works for me. If you lived in Sandfield, you would call me Randy.
Randy.
So, yeah, Randy. Interesting tale.
Ah,
From Tombigbee.
that's interesting.
If you
Okay, I'm going to break out the questions that we have. Now, some of the questions I developed, some of the questions have come in from interested parties who are readers and people who are your constituents. So, they're the same questions I will ask the other candidate, and I would ask the third candidate, but they have decided not to take part. So, here we go. All right, my very first question. Are you ready?
I am.
First of all, Darren, tell me who you are and your background, your educational background, your professional background.
Absolutely. So my name is Darren Leach. Of course, you know that. I actually grew up, I was born here in Columbus, Mississippi. I moved to New York. I was about 2 years old, not of my choosing. My parents moved to New York back in the late 60s, which, of course, there's a whole story about that. We shipped me back to Columbus when I was 13. So I attended Joe Cook. I left Joe Cook, and then I went to Columbus Caldwell. I graduated from Columbus Caldwell in 1983. And then after that, I went to Jackson State University and Tennessee State University, did a whole lot of cool stuff there, and graduated with a mechanical engineer's degree, Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering. I went to work for a corporation called Procter & Gamble. I worked there for about 10 and a half years. Started off as what they call a systems engineer, which just meant I went around figuring out what could be improved and making engineering kind of changes to their processes. And then I moved from there to a team leader, from there to a department manager, from there to a sector-wide resource. So I've done a few things. Left there, got called into ministry, left there, and then did several small businesses. And what I did through those were basically just training for me as I look back on it. So I had a real estate license, mortgage license. I did real estate development. I learned about insurance. I got a securities license. So I just learned a gamut, a full range of things. And so a couple of years ago, and of course, and then I moved back to Columbus back in 2007. When I got back to Columbus, I started the church. A couple of years later, did a whole bunch of programs in Columbus from workforce development. We did, what would you call it, for people that were trying to get their lives in order. We just workforce development. What is it? GED prep courses. We did, I don't know how many summer feeding programs. We worked with children. We did all kinds of stuff. And what I realized was, over that period of time, was that there were people that had great ideas and there were people that had resources, and they didn't always come together. So about 2.5 years ago now, I started working with this other group out of New Orleans. They pulled me in and started training me on how to train nonprofits to get to the resources. And so one of the things in that process was you were supposed to meet with the major stakeholders in your city. That's how I talked to all of our councilmen, with the exception of one. I didn't get to one of the council people. I just couldn't connect with them. And then I met the mayor. That's how I met the mayor, through that. And so when I went in and talked to him about this process we were using, he immediately put me on his schedule and thought, this guy sounds like he might have a little bit of sense. So we start meeting every other week. And from there, we started attending different seminars together to find resources. And that's where we ran across that grant that a lot of people hear about, the $20 million grant.
Okay.
And we've done actually several, but that's a backstory and a quick backstory. So I've done a number of things in terms of skill development, but the thing that's most passionate to me now is how we bring all that stuff together to make the city better. So that's what I'm thinking of.
Okay. So
Yeah.
now that leads to that meshes really well.
Perfect segue.
Yeah, it's a nice dovetail into what I'm going to ask. So, if elected, what are your goals and how would you fund them? And can you prioritize your goals?
Absolutely. So I've spoken in a number of places to talk about a platform. I try to keep it simple so people don't have to guess anymore. So my platform is very simple. We want to rebuild the community overall. So when we look at or what that means exactly, I got this acronym that kind of sums it up so everybody can understand it, and it's RIPEN. And RIPEN just means I'm going to focus on recreation and education, infrastructure, public safety, economic development, and neighborhoods. And when I talk about those, the prioritization of those goals is my priorities are first, make sure that we all align to a vision. The second thing we want to do is create a comprehensive plan. Because while they're my priorities, they have to be our priorities if we're going to get them done. So we'll work with the mayor and council to prioritize what we want to do. But we know we want to do recreation and education. And quite frankly, all that means is we want to give our kids stuff to do that's safe, clean, fun, stuff to do. And from an infrastructure standpoint, what we're saying is we want the roads to be well maintained, right? We want the potholes fixed, right? And from a public safety standpoint, we want people to be able to sit on their porches or walk through their neighborhoods. We don't want people to be driving and feel like they've stumbled into the wrong neighborhood. So we want it to be safe all through Columbus. And from an economic development standpoint, two things are going to be priorities to me. Number one is we got to get people good paying jobs. So the jobs come to the county. We got to make sure that people inside the city are prepared for those jobs and they're able to get those jobs. And then when it comes to the last one, which is in our neighborhoods, I want to make sure that we create what Keith talks about as a seamless city. What we want to make sure is that the same kind of attention, there are neighborhoods in the city that are what we call disinvested. In other words, there are places where they just haven't seen investments like other parts. So while the downtown area gets a lot of attention, there are pockets of communities inside the city that don't get that same kind of attention. What we have to do is make sure that the same kind of attention gets to those pockets of communities, right? So we want to build homes in those communities. That's what I mean by investments. We want to build commercial structures in those communities because that's what I mean by investment. We want to make sure that the roads and the streets are clean and the neighborhoods are clean everywhere. Same kind of attention we pay to downtown. We got to get everybody engaged in paying the same kind of attention to our own communities. Does that make sense? So that's our platform. From a goal standpoint, I haven't lighted on specific numbers for how many jobs we want, but I know we want to increase that. And because I'm going to be thinking in terms of median income. So I'm going to go in and see if I could get some more information about that once we get in, and we'll set those goals together so that we're all pushing towards them. Same thing with the number of houses that we build. I know we need to build a bunch of houses in Columbus. We're down about 600 to 800 houses in terms of affordable. We're going to build, and we're going to form public-private partnerships to make sure that stuff happens.
Okay.
Those are the kind of things that we'll be looking at doing. Go ahead. Did you
Okay. So branching off of that, on your first day of office, you've been sworn in. Right. You've been given the keys to the city. What do you plan to do? Who do you plan to meet with?
I'm gonna schedule meetings over that first week with all of our department heads, and I'll do that with our COO. And my goal there is very simple. I want to, just introduce myself to the ones in a more professional manner. I know most of the people, but I want to introduce myself in a more professional manner to them. And the other thing is I want to understand what their priorities are as they see them, right? Because in order for us to really set meaningful goals for the government part of this, in order to set meaningful goals, we got to make sure that everybody is clear on what their mission is. So if we go into a department like, say, Public Works, I want to know, what do you see the mission as for the leader? What does that mean to you? And what are the key performance indicators that you're actually getting what you want? How do you know your organization is doing well? How do you track that? We're going to talk about those kind of things. How do you track those things? And how often do you report on those things? Because what we don't want people to have is what I call lofty goals. I don't want them to say things are good, right? Because that's subjective. We want to say, what does good mean? We got, how many potholes are in the city? How fast are we responding to people's complaints? All of those things need to be tracked. Now, I'm not certain how well those things are being tracked. I know they're not as transparent as they can be, right? But as we get to the point where we're tracking those and we're transparent and we're doing well, we'll refine those.
Okay.
We'll get more and more precise, right? So that's the first week is to get to know everybody and talk about what is the mission of your organization. And then we will work through over the next couple of months. How do we report on ourselves?
So
That will be the
after
way
that first week, how often do you think you will meet? What is your plan at this moment for how often you would meet with department heads? Would it be weekly, twice a week, monthly? How would you?
I think we definitely got to do results reviews at least weekly. That sounds like a lot, but that's only 52 times a year to do results reviews. We've got to do results reviews at least weekly. And wherever we have areas where we have concerns and we need to focus, we will meet with them more often. And the job is this, or the thought process is this. We're not looking to find fault. We're looking to find solutions, right? So transparency allows us to see the faults so we could develop the solutions. There's nothing wrong with transparency. Transparency lets everybody know this needs attention. And so with the skill set that I have, once we understand where the problems are, we can drill down to root causes and start finding solutions. Because that is a skill set that I have, those people that need that, we'll work a little bit more with them. And once things are under control, you can ease off of the number of meetings, right? You don't need as many meetings when things are under control. But while we're in what I call either breakthrough or control and improve stages, we'll need to meet more frequently.
So you're planning to run the city like a project manager?
I'm planning to put systems in place like a project manager, and then hopefully the city will run itself like a project manager would run it.
Okay.
And the thought process is this, Shannon. It's just when I was in corporate America, one of the things they told us was you can expect what you inspect. So if you're not looking at the right things, you won't get the right result. And so we got to look at those objective things that tell us things are running well.
Okay.
If you're anything like me, while you don't mind paying taxes, it's not one of your favorite things.
No.
But we pay taxes because we have to fund services. And when we fund those services, we want those services to be delivered with efficiency and with excellence. Because I don't want you wasting my money that I work for. And nobody does. And so that's why we will set up systems like project managers. And of course, if we do that, things that may fall through the cracks, they are harder to fall through the cracks when you're watching.
Okay, that leads me to my next question. Who will you appoint or hire as your COO and your CFO?
I don't know if that's my responsibility to hire those.
But what kind of person would you be looking for? Not a name.
I would definitely be looking for someone who is passionate about. There are two things that I look for in leaders, because I think leadership skill is transferable, right? What I look for in leaders are two things. One is initiative. I look for people who will go out and try things, who will figure out, hey, this needs some attention, and will figure out something and bring back potential solutions. Everybody can see the problems. Everybody can see the pothole. I need people that can actually go out and say, hey, this is a pothole. It's recurring. We probably need to drill down a little bit further to find out what's the root cause of this so we can address the root cause. So I look for people that can show initiative. The second thing I look for in a good leader is I look for people who are open to feedback, right? If they're not open to feedback, then if you are where you are and that's where you stay. If you're open to feedback, then we can open up communication and figure out better solutions. One of the things that really gets my goat or gall is when a person says, that's the way we always done it. If I hear that, then I'm like, okay, but what are the results? The results are horrible. Then don't you think that we should show some initiative and change? And then also, why don't we get that system that's in your head on paper so that we could criticize it and you not feel offended? You understand what I'm saying? So by documenting our systems and people being willing to do those kind of things, we'll be able to get better. So when I look for leaders, I look for people that do that kind of stuff. I look for people who show initiative and who are open to feedback And that implies this third thing, that they have great communication skills, that they're not easily flustered. Because we're talking about running a city, which means there are people that are going to be passionate about the stuff they ask us. That's why I'll interview with anybody. I don't care who you are. I don't care how you come at me. That's your prerogative. But I have to answer the questions because we're talking about 25,000, 24,000 different people, different personalities, different ways of communicating. I have to be able to listen. So I need people that do that, and I need people that communicate, and I need people that close loop.
Okay.
You know what I mean by closed loop?
Yes, I do. You want to explain it
Yeah.
for our listeners?
Absolutely. So if you tell a person you're going to fix a pothole, and you fix the pothole, you go back to that person and tell them we fixed the pothole. You understand what I'm saying? Because the other thing we want is we want a whole group of citizens that feel like they're being heard. It's not enough for them to be heard. They got to feel it. They got to feel like you heard them. And when you use other people's language and you close loop with them on concerns that they have, they know, even if you didn't do it, they know you heard them. They know you heard them. And people deserve that. That's one of the things they pay for when they pay for their taxes, when they pay their taxes.
Okay, so
Right.
that leads me to my next question. Do you plan to do write-outs with certain departments to each ward to see the area for yourself?
Absolutely, all the time, all the time. One of the things that I'm going to track, I can't make councilmen do anything. They're council, they're elected. But one thing I will track is how often we go into their communities and hear from people.
Okay.
I know that's one thing I'll track. You don't have to do it, but I'm still going to track when you do it. So if each councilman decides that they're going to do their, or woman decides they're going to do their meetings, the regular council meetings, and a ward meeting a month, I'm going to do my dead level best to be at every one of those ward meetings. And I'm going to do my dead level best to spend some time with each councilman just riding around saying, or woman, and saying, hey, what can we do to make things better here? How does the stuff that we're talking about apply to this ward? Because that will build relationships with me and the council people. We're not against each other. We're all trying to make the city better, right? And so I need to hear from them. They need to hear from their constituents, right? Because we don't represent ourselves. I'm not asking for something so I could be that guy. I'm asking for an opportunity to serve, which means if I'm going to serve, I got to know what that means to you. What does serve mean to Shannon, right? If you say to me, that means I need my streets fixed. And if I call you and tell you I want a speed bump put up and you don't put the speed bump, I need to know why, because I asked.
And a bump out gets put out in place.
And look, oh, I'm sorry, that may not have been the best.
It's all right. All we needed was a four-way stop, and we got a planter. But
Let's think about that.
let's
So
put
that's
some trees
why-
in it, or put some flowers in it, and keep going.
But that's why communication is important. When I said
Yeah.
earlier, there's three things: initiative, response to feedback. We might not be the best way, so I need to be able to talk to people and have information inform my decisions. And then last but certainly not least, we got to be able to communicate and close.
And
right?
part of that is it's not, and I want to make this clear for our listeners.
Sure.
What he's talking about is the council. So a citizen goes to their council person or they go to their mayor. Today, here's what I did. I went to Friendship Cemetery. There is a massive branch that broke off a tree. It's blocking one of the streets in Friendship Cemetery. That may not seem like a big deal, but the city owns Friendship Cemetery. I didn't have the council person for that district in my phone, but I had the mayor in my phone. So I texted him and sent him a picture and said, you can't get through the road within this space. Now, fortunately, people can go around different roads, but nevertheless, two big branches are down. The mayor says, thank you very much. I'll send City Works. Now, I won't know, and the mayor could send me a note later, but it gets sent to City Works. City Works may or may not go back to the ward person, may or may not go to the mayor. They may just go remove the obstruction, and it's a massive branch. It was huge. I couldn't pull it off the road. But I as a citizen may or may not hear back from the mayor because the mayor's gone on to the next thing. And it's not just your elected officials who are involved in this feedback loop. It
Right.
is elected officials, city employees, appointed employees, depending on what the issue is. Understanding that, that's going to lead me to my next question.
Before you ask that,
Uh huh.
when I say feedback loop, right, that doesn't necessarily mean they call you. That
No.
means you get the feedback. So, one of the things you'll hear me talk about as we have more conversations is my idea of moving our city into what I call the 21st century, right? We got to move into the 21st century. There's so much technology out there to do stuff, right? And if
Tickets.
we were
The
running,
ticket
we were
system.
running if we were running a corporation, we would use that stuff.
Yeah.
And the government probably runs a whole lot more like a corporation than a small business, right?
Yes.
So let's think about this, Shannon. Have you ever ordered a pizza from Domino's?
Yes.
So
Been many
that you had to
years,
pick
but
up.
yes.
Oh, then you haven't ordered. So you don't have the app?
Yes, I do.
So
I
have you seen the Domino tracker
yes.
on the app? So I think it's nothing wrong, and they do that for thousands of pizzas a week. We can certainly do it for a tree down, right? You logged your complaint, and it goes to the app, and you got a tracker. The public's work has been informed, right? Somebody went out to fix it today.
It's a ticket
It's
system.
done.
It's what we in IT call a ticket system. Information comes in, it tells you there's an issue. The ticket gets diverted to the correct portal. It gets ticketed out, and the end user.
It's watching it go. You could do it with your packages. You could do
Yep.
it with anything. The technology exists. We just have to apply it. Now think about how many phone calls can be avoided. The reason Domino's did it is so you don't have to call them and say, "Are we done yet?
Yeah.
Are we done yet? Are we done yet?"
It saved the man hours
So
in the long time.
Exactly.
So, how much would a
Investigate-
system like that cost for a city?
I wish I knew, but we will investigate it when we get into office. When we get into office, we'll ask somebody, go look for a system like this so that we can close loop with people so people will know that we're paying attention to their issues.
Do you know
Now,
any other
and then
cities who do this?
But then we'll do a cost analysis to see what is the benefit versus the cost. But think about it. If it doesn't cost us a tremendous amount of money, if we can put us, and I'm thinking it's probably pretty cookie cutter out there right now. If we could get it for something that's worth it, we can actually change how people feel about what they're doing. They know how things are going. Those are the kind of things we want to bring to the city, not just ideas. That's the kind of technology that we will use so that we can get people doing what only people can do.
Okay.
I don't need people to stop their job to answer the phone to say, "Are you done yet?"
Okay, now that
doing
leads to my next question.
Certainly. What you got?
We have a weak mayor, strong council system. How do you propose to get the council to even consider a plan like this?
Again, I think it all rises and falls on relationships, right? And communication, right? So we got to go out of our way to build relationships with people. And then there's this thing that I worked from that I learned maybe about 15 years ago from this group called Bayo. And what they talked about was this thing called a narrow strip of unity. What they said in essence was, we don't agree on everything. Nobody agrees on everything. Let's figure out what we do agree on, and let's work on those things that we agree on, right? And so as we get the council together, I won't be just telling, "Hey, these are my ideas." I want to hear what's important to you. And the priorities will be the things that we share as important. Those will be our initial priorities, right? Because people have energy to work on the things that are important to them. Right?
Okay.
One of the things that I teach as I train nonprofits is this. I say, you can go into an office and tell them all the things you want, but that's not what they're going to do. What you really want to do is find out what's important to that office that you go into. And the stuff that's on your wish list that's important to them, talk about those things, because those are the things they're going to fund for you.
Yeah,
right?
in Six Sigma, we call it the pain points. What are their pain points?
That's it. And then once you understand that, and everybody has them, there are people that are going into the council now that are running off of pain points. Whatever those pain points are, I'm going to make sure that not only do the constituents feel like they're heard, I'm going to make the council folks know that I hear them as well.
Okay.
Right?
So let's presume you got the council's buy-in. The citizens are eager for this. We don't have the money for it. So, what are some alternate ways? Like they're saying they want to support this plan, they are gangbusters for it. What
Absolutely.
measures can you take, or that you might be able to take, to see this plan for something like this to come to fruition? Because this is
One of the
literally dragging us into the modern app driven world.
one of the beautiful things about being in the nonprofit arena is this. We are accustomed to making bricks without straw. Right. We're accustomed to getting things done with no money.
Yep.
So we're forced to be creative in how we figure out how do we get things done. Specifically, how do we get them funded? Now, what that has led me to is that has led me to organizations that have tentacles in all walks of society. But there are also people that are interested in cities that are just like Columbus, right? Columbus is potential rich, resource strapped. So there are people that are looking at how can I take a city that's like that has been disinvested because of environmental justice issues, which is a bad word now, depending on which
Uh
administration
huh.
you're listening to,
Yeah.
right? But you could look at communities that have those kind of issues, and you could ask the question. Let's break it down. What does that mean? Environmental justice issues. You look at people who need workforce development. You look at people that need affordable housing. You need people that need their communities reinvested in. And how can I participate? So you have foundations, you have government entities that are interested in the same kind of things that we are, and you have federal entities that are interested in the same kind of things we are. So we will write grants to those different people and say, look, this is what you want done, this is what we need done. And we'll do this stuff, and then we'll have your spokesperson come down and take pictures and talk about how great of a job they did in helping us rebuild our community. That's the grant. They do it for publicity and philanthropy. We do it because it changes the quality of life for our citizens, right? And where those match, those narrow strips of unity, that's where we'll go find the funds. We'll look at foundations, private foundations. We'll look at Jackson. We'll go to Jackson, and we'll go to Washington D.C.
Okay.
So we'll find the money.
As funding is going to be very austere, shall we say, over the
Right?
next 4 to 8 years, what strategies will you use to attract businesses to Columbus, and what will you offer as incentives? What do you envision?
Well, let's talk about what we mean by attract businesses, right? Columbus is not a great big city. It's 24,000 people, right? When you talk about getting great big box stores, they look at the numbers, right? They look at median income, they look at traffic. So to talk about getting a Target, I'm not sure how much Target's probably another one not good to talk about right now.
Yeah, it's not a good fit for this town.
There,
Numbers,
exactly.
just numbers wise, just numbers.
Exactly. So, what is the strategy for Columbus? We need to grow our homegrown small businesses, right? So, we got some people with some pretty good, eclectic, funky kind of ideas that we can build on so that Columbus can be that friendly city with those niche things that we want here, right? So, we could open up a jazz club here, right? And they could serve Cajun style food there. And I'll never forget, there was a guy, he had a restaurant out here not far from where I live called Fish and Blues, right? Really small restaurant, about as
It
big
was
as a
wonderful.
person's.
It was wonderful.
It was absolutely amazing there, right? So for people that have those kind of ideas, the problem was he was a great cook and the owner. You know what I'm saying? And he started up the business in the morning and he shut it down at night and he had his family working with them, right? So for those folks, we got to teach them how to scale. How get them the business acumen to take their great ideas and great recipes and scale them. And so if we grow those things in-house, we do two things. One is we create more job opportunities because we build small businesses into medium-sized businesses. But the other thing is we give Columbus that variety of things that Columbus needs. Columbus needs a variety of food places to eat.
Let
We
me
don't just
interrupt you
need
there.
sure,
Because
sure,
while
sure.
those are great, mostly they do not pay living wages to the workers.
I agree. I agree. It's hard to get living wages out of there. I agree.
So
But
it
we
sounds
gotta
to
try.
me a lot of the industry, I know that we do not have space in much of the town to develop large scale industry.
Right.
We do have some empty factories that possibly should be leveled and that space offered and redeveloped.
Something else done with it.
Yes,
Something else done with that
something
space.
else
Right.
done with it on a large scale.
Right.
While I agree that we need more small businesses and we need local entrepreneurship,
Right.
but for economic growth to happen, we need to have some form of industry, either peripheral that the people want to live in Columbus, but we also have space. And a lot of people tell me there's no place for industry to be in Columbus, and I disagree. We have all the old clothing mills that are sitting empty. There's nobody out there. We have where General Tire was, that's not being completely utilized. Airline Road has several places. We have lots of space to bring in new industry. What are we doing
Let
to
me.
attract new industry? How would you do that?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Let me say it this way. Typically, if you put industry where you have dense population, that's usually a problem 30 years from now, right? So you put something inside the community that's putting out some sort of exhaust, right? Whatever the exhaust is. And Kermit McGee was creosote,
Oh, yeah.
right? If you're putting out some kind of exhaust, people are going to breathe, eat that stuff if it's in the community. So whatever industry, and I don't know if that's the right word, but whatever stuff we bring to the city, it has to be clean because people live there. It has to be really clean.
Correct.
So I could see something like warehouse work or something like that without a whole lot of exhaust, because those exhausts spill right into those communities. However, because we're building all of these super industrial sites right in Lowndes County, we're not that far from industry. When I talk about small businesses, I'm not talking about jobs for mom and dad. I'm talking about jobs for the kids. These are teenage jobs. Do you remember when they used to work at the Sonics and the small restaurants? Those are the ones that the kids in school get jobs in after school.
I'm going to interrupt you there. I'm going to interrupt you
Well,
there.
sure.
I'm going to interrupt you there.
Sure.
Many of those jobs still exist in Columbus. Many of
agree.
them are underhired. They're always asking for employees. Many of those are having to be filled by adults who are working multiple jobs because there are no other positions. And yet, kids do have the opportunity to have those jobs too. And some do, and many don't. So they are still underpaid minimum wage or barely over minimum wage jobs. That does not fund a tax base. How do you create income for those who will stay here and who will promote home ownership so even more taxes can be collected? How do you create economic growth beyond hourly wage positions, professional jobs?
Okay. So when I talked about those jobs before, I wasn't talking about build our small businesses so that we could create a living wage. That's not what I was thinking. What I'm thinking is we got to meet the needs of the city, and that will pay living wages. Our city is down by a huge number of homes. So there is a massive opportunity in the building or the construction section in Columbus because we have a lot of blighted properties that need to be brought down and more houses brought up. I think as we talk about going into the 21st century, we wrote a grant a couple of months ago, 2 or 3 months ago, and the purpose of that grant was so that we could plan for green technology, right? So one of the things we could do in Columbus is we could create a green distribution center, right? Or a solar panel distribution center. And we can make it a point to completely solarize the city. Lofty goal, But those jobs are low barrier to educational entry
and high
and
paying.
huge dollars.
Yeah.
Huge dollars. If you can bolt something down and plug things together, you can install solar panels. All you need, but now you do need an electrician degree, or you need to be an electrician to connect it to the battery and set up the battery system in the house. But as far as just putting the solar up, huge opportunity there. So when we wrote that grant, that first 250,000 was to just talk about what that looks like. The second 2 million is to talk about how broad it can be and get all the key stakeholders together. Then there was a $50 million component that will allow us to incentivize distributors to come to Columbus. That's my thought. My thought is, let's swing for the fence. Let's really bring the city into the 21st century. There's not a foreseeable end to the amount of building that needs to be done in Columbus.
Okay,
right?
so let's look at that building. How
Sure.
do you make sure that neighborhoods do not become high density, high rise apartments? Not high rise in our town, but multi unit apartments that end up not locally owned and not locally maintained, because if you're not local to own it, it usually doesn't get taken care of. We have had times in our city where homes were demolished because they were derelict or whatever, needed to go, maybe didn't need to go
everywhere.
And so I look at Burns Bottom. Now Burns Bottom, for whatever reason, the city lost interest in. They decided it was a den of iniquity. They wanted to tear all those houses down. Now those people were moved. They say they found other housing for them. They gave them opportunity. I don't know, because I haven't spoken to the people who were forced to move, but the area is still sitting there undeveloped, and the housing they're talking about putting there is not for modest homeowners. We're talking houses that they're talking $300,000, and it'll be high density. The homes will be built. Some of the drawings show them built to the zero lot line, meaning they will be almost like garden style homes, like you see they're planning it after what it looks like in Oxford, Mississippi. So they're courting a new tax base into town to live in Burns Bottom and build housing there. And they dislocated the people who had no money, tore down existing homes. Now those homes, according to some, were not good, whatever reason they want to give. They were abandoned, they were flop houses. I've heard all kinds of stuff. But I'm not seeing a plan to build homes for people on fixed incomes and moderate incomes and help them to become a path to home ownership. And rental property is just not to be found. You can't find any, and if what you do find, there's having bidding wars. And let's say it's a single mom with 2 kids, and she's trying to put one foot in front of the other. She can't find a place to live, and that leaves her with apartments. And we have it's not a path. It's a path to debt and continued debt. It's not a path to investment and opportunity. So
Go ahead.
I think that's a very important question to address in this town. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. What we have to do is build affordable housing. And so I'm not saying that I'm against the $300,000 homes. Do what you do. But we still got to think about that single mom that you're talking about, right? So I go into those homes, right? I get calls. People call me, hey, I just need $20. I just need groceries. And when I go into those homes, that's the weight on my shoulder. It's when I go deliver a meal, like when Johnny Hampton used to do those Thanksgiving dinners. I was a delivery guy for Johnny, right? We go into, so you know what I'm talking about. You go into the homes and I'm thinking, I don't know how people could live like this. So when I wrote that $20 million grant that people are still trying to understand, part of that was just to build 15 affordable houses, right? And the reason is, we know that there's a shortage, but we've got to start sparking the redevelopment. See, here's the thing with Columbus, or here's the thing you're talking about, and I've seen it in a number of communities. It's called gentrification.
That's
So
exactly
once
what
you
they're
go,
planning.
exact. So it's, and you see it, it's not just Columbus, it's everywhere. It's really the new colonization, but that's a whole nother discussion. But what we see through redevelopment is unwelcome displacement. In other words, grandma lives in Memphis town all the time that creosote is going into the community. And then as soon as the community cleans up, we built something too expensive, raise grandma's taxes, and she can't afford to pay taxes.
She can't stay in her home.
Exactly. So why I'm asking us get involved in the redevelopment is because once the policies will allow it, building is going to occur because there's only so much land. And what happens is this stuff is not looked at. It's derelict forever. It starts to look like land on clearance sale. That's what happened with Burns Bottom. Burns Bottom went from derelict to a clearance sale. We can get it really cheap and make a ton of money off of it, right? The same thing is going to happen in Burns Circle, Memphis Town, and the Queen City area. If we don't take ownership of the redevelopment and make sure that we're redeveloping it with those single moms, those people who are just now getting some traction in life, if we don't do it with those people in mind, that's exactly what's going to happen. So when I talk about creating affordable housing, it is really, let's form public-private partnerships. Let's sprinkle houses into these communities and incentivize them doing stuff that works for those moms and dads while they're trying to get their footing.
Okay.
Now, I've talked to some people about what that looks like. Exactly how that applies into Columbus, I won't know specifically until we dig into that. But that's the thought process. The thought process is, let's make sure grandmama's taxes don't go up while we rebuild the neighborhood around her. I've spoken to some people from the ACLU. I have some contacts there. And so they look at things like doing policy moratoriums on tax increases. So there are things we can do. I just need us all sitting at the table talking about it so we could get the vote that we need to make it happen.
Okay. Can we shift just a little bit to a tangential subject? But it goes back to something you said earlier, but it circles back to that same idea. So how will you make Columbus more appealing to younger residents and retain the talent? So now we talked about businesses and supporting entrepreneurship, but
that's not what a city's about. People stay in cities because they find stuff to do. We gotta create stuff to do. So one of the things that I'm doing, I actually have a meeting. I have one at 1:00 today, and then I have another one. I'm not sure when it is because I don't keep my schedule. I have to call Jessica and find out when it is. But I have another meeting this week where we're talking about what should the Queen City area look like? How do we get the right stakeholders together to reimagine the Queen City area, right? But I could see us having spoken word cafes, jazz clubs, blues museum there, all of that stuff, and well lit. You know what I'm saying? And nice paved roads with sidewalks so people can walk through there and have stuff to do. We have to invest and continue to invest in our parks and recreation. We've got to create bike lanes and things where people could ride up and down the street and get that social infrastructure that makes us feel safe when we're traveling through the city. Now, those kind of things or quality of life things is what makes the talent stay.
Okay.
Or else they're gonna live in Columbus, not even live in Columbus, they'll live in Starkville and work in Columbus.
All right, that meets the next two questions. That's a perfect segue. What is your plan to reduce gun violence in Columbus, and how will you work with law enforcement and community organizations to address this issue?
I'm so glad that's the number one thing.
And that's a problem nationwide. We are not unique. Our numbers are not greater than anybody else's. We are no different than any other small town across the country.
Exactly right. That's exactly right. But our marketing campaign is very different. So we got to do a better job of marketing. There are two things that I think will help with that. Number one is I think transparency helps always, right? So when we talk about transparency with respect to the police department, a lot of people want to go to the stuff about police stuff, but I'm not saying that. I'm saying we should know what the crime data is on a regular basis, right? So if the data is saying that crime is going down, we don't need to find out about it after a shooting. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because when there's a shooting, to say, well, our crime is still below where it was last year, nobody wants to hear that after a shooting.
And that's disingenuous.
It does sound that way. Even though what you're trying to say is not as bad, but so what we have to do is make sure that we keep the data in front of people so they can see how things are trending. Does that make sense? That's one thing. The other thing is we've got to use technology to deter crimes. We've got to increase our use of the cops in the sky and other AI technology. We've got to increase the use of that stuff. It's there. And it does a better job of not falling asleep than people do. It's there. Let's use that stuff. So we got to invest in that. We've got to get our staffing right. We've got to get our staffing right with the police department. We got to do that. Now, all of those things are to make sure that when people do crimes, they get caught. We don't want people doing crimes. That's why we got to invest in early childhood education. We've got to invest in our recreational department, right? We've got to get people from different walks of life socializing together on a regular basis, whether that's at baseball games, whether that's at pickleball games, whether that's at basketball games. If people from, and I'm not just talking race, I'm talking rich, poor, middle class, playing basketball together, rich, poor, middle class, playing baseball together, rich or middle class, playing soccer together. Once we start weaving those folks together, you start to understand each other better and the threat is gone. People are threatened by stuff they don't know, right? If you're standing in front of somebody and they have their hands behind their back, you're gonna start wondering, what are they trying to hide? But if they put their hands in front of them, it removes the threat. So we got to get people socializing to do that. That's why I'm going to suggest that we really invest in, now listen to what I'm about to say, public-private partnerships or public-private partnerships to make sure that our Parks and Recs department is firing on all cylinders, right? We got to make sure that these coaches that are doing these AU leagues, that they're funded, because they're doing a great job of taking the kids out of town to play basketball. But we want them to go out of town and play basketball. And where are you going? I'm going to Kentucky. What part? Louisville. Why don't you drop out of college and take some pictures while you're over there? Let them see what campus life is like. Because some of our children are just victims of underexposure, right?
Yeah.
And by creating systems, enabling systems that allow them to be exposed to different things, they'll grow up thinking that they can do more than just play sports or just do hair. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So we gotta invest in our recreation.
I'm a firm believer.
To crime.
I'm a firm
That's
believer
a
in.
crime solution. Yeah.
I'm a firm believer in recreation. Not there's so many kids who are involved in travel ball. I have no problem with travel ball, but travel ball is a rich kid's sport. Now there are some organizations in our community who are making sure that kids who have less but who have talent have the ability to be on a travel team. Kudos to them. But what if your son's little Johnny, he's got 2 left feet and he needs rec level ball to go learn? I used to tell my kids, every season you have to play a sport. I don't care what sport it is. You got to do something every season and to learn how to be a human. And I really think growing up here, and we played Pony League softball, or we played T-ball or Melot or whatever. I laughed. I was talking to someone I grew up with last night, and I said, when we were kids, Gibson's across the street, which is the old Palmer building, that team had the orange baseball shirt. They had the orange sleeves and the white body, and on it said Gibson's, and it started at 0-0. It had nobody's name on it, because you had to turn that T-shirt back in, and the next year somebody else got that T-shirt.
They
washed it, and it might have a green arm, it might have a green elbow on it, but you wore it.
That's right.
And Cash and Carry had the black T-shirts. Theirs had the black sleeves, and you knew everybody by the color of their sleeves. Matter.
We had teams Alpha Phi Alpha. I remember it was, and I didn't know that was a fraternity until I went to college.
Yeah.
But those are the things, when I talked about public, go ahead.
But our
Shannon, you look like
kids
you wanna say
need
something.
that. Our kids need that.
Absolutely.
And it went up
Absolutely.
until high school.
Absolutely.
We didn't
Not only do
have
our
we
kids
didn't
need
have
that,
select teams. There's nothing wrong with select teams. Hear me out. But we need something in place to help our kids want to be a success. And we have
by
to
the way,
force them to participate in some way. And I know people think that's a horrible thing to say to kids. Kids don't want to do anything. If you let them do nothing, they'll do nothing. We didn't have iPhones and Xboxes. We had comic books, and I would have laid on the front porch and read a comic book if my dad hadn't
made you get outside and play.
made me get up off that and go to swim practice or go mow the
So
yard.
let me tell you my thoughts about that, Shannon. So we did a program about 15 years ago. You may have heard about it. It was a program called Lace Up. The Lace Up program, I had one thought and one thought only. It was about exposure. And here's why. I'm a firm believer that once you come in contact with what you're designed to do, it makes a mark on you that's hard to erase. So it wasn't until I started solving problems that I realized I am built for this. This is what I'm built for. I remember as a little kid laying in the bed, looking up at the ceiling and spotting patterns. I walk places and look on the ground and I spot the pattern. Everywhere I went, I was looking for the pattern and I was looking for disruptions in the pattern. Didn't realize till later on, that's a design, right? I'm designed that way and other people are designed that way. I see you smiling like that was you. Always looking for patterns or disruptions in patterns.
Yep.
When there's a disruption in pattern, I can see it. That's not right. That's out. So what I wanted to do with that program was simply expose children to things they might not normally get exposed to, realizing everybody's not going to everything. But you need to find that thing that incentivizes you, that thing that makes you want to get up and go do it. So in our program, we had some kids, they got excited when they went to the college campuses. Some kids got excited when we took them to the Mercedes-Benz plant, right? Some people got excited when we went to play sports. Everybody got excited at different times.
About something.
But it was the fear about something. And it was the fear of getting that taken away that made them do well in school. So we had kids that were getting referrals on a regular basis. They stopped getting referrals because they didn't want to get kicked out of our program.
Yeah.
So but in order to do that, we've got to meet the children where they are. That means that everybody's not going to play baseball. Cool. Try it on though. You don't know what you don't like. You taste it.
Exactly.
You know?
I've always told my kids, try everything, try it on, but you're not quitting. Once you sign up for it, you're in there, and you got to stick it out.
Give me a season to find out if you really hate it or if that's just.
And if you don't want to do it again, I'm fine. But you're going to do something, so you better find something you like.
That was the thought process. Now the good part is now we have other things we can do because we have esports, right? Everybody's not for esports. However, they're giving scholarships for that stuff. People are making money doing that stuff, right? So if you're good and if you can monetize it, let's do that. So those things are the things that as a recreational department, we can create the structure for. And then let the churches plug in, the small businesses plug in. Like you said, cash and carry. They didn't create the league, they just sponsored the team.
Yeah.
All these churches, they don't need to create the league, they just need to sponsor teams. It's a win-win for all of us. The small businesses, they get free advertisement because you're wearing their name on your shirt. The churches, you get bigger membership because now you got 10 kids and their parents because they play on your team.
And how many of those churches have empty gyms?
Exactly. So
we could be having indoor soccer. We could be having indoor broom ball. We could have pickleball leagues. We can have basketball leagues.
Now, let me tell you what I found, Shannon. What I found is that churches, and if you ask a pastor, because I'm run like one of those, right? So if you ask pastors, it's really hard for pastors to get pastors together, right?
That's a problem in this town, too. We need pastors together creating an association that has our youth in mind.
And even if they do, they will create a segmented association.
I was told that there are churches in this town that have gyms that
Oh, there are a
in,
bunch of them.
and that will not, I know that, but they tell the people that want to, that they have to be part of whatever youth program. They have to sign up and commit to their youth program to come use their facilities. Now, I'm of the mind, I want everybody to come, and then you like it so much, you are like-minded,
That you always want to come.
that you always want to come back.
So
I don't want it to be an idea where it's a scarcity thing, because then that becomes
right.
marketing, and that's icky for a church.
And that's why I was saying that I used this term earlier, and I'm sure you know what it is, but I use the term social infrastructure. One of the things that the rec department can do is create that infrastructure, right? See, here's what I realized. Churches don't necessarily come when churches call. But when the mayor calls, you can get more churches to come to the table, right? Because they feel like now we're addressing our city and not just your church.
And I want our churches to realize they are part of this city.
I agree.
And they can be part of the solution. We're not asking them to to share the whole burden.
I think they believe that. I just think they don't come when they call each other. I can remember having ideas and talking to pastors and asking them to come talk. As a matter of fact, when I did the after school program I did, everybody told me how great my idea was, but it was hard to get the pastors to come out. So what I ended up doing was stop talking to the pastors. I started talking to their youth leaders. So we're talking about creating that social infrastructure. I think we just need the blessing of the pastor. We need the commitment of their youth leaders. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because the youth leaders are the ones that are going to gather the kids up and take them places. If you think about Eric Thomas, do you know Eric Thomas?
Yeah.
Youth leader. He's a youth leader.
Yeah, he does.
Sanders.
Yeah.
He was a youth leader. Exactly. So those are the people that are going to grab the kids. If you don't know that, you'll think what you do is call the pastors. No, you just want their blessing. They don't even need to be at the meetings every week. You need those youth leaders there, because those are the ones that are going to coach. Those are the ones that are going to help you develop the social infrastructure, and those are the ones that are going to want to be a part of something bigger.
I'm gonna take you on a bird hunt, but just for a brief second, and then I'm gonna see if you have a couple.
I didn't expect you to take me on a bird hunt at all.
Okay, we do know each other well enough. Okay,
what you got?
I'm not Baptist, but when I was a young person in this town, First Baptist Church had a huge program. Huge. They also had, and I was the drive-by Sunday school kid. My parents would drive by, drop me off. I'd go to Sunday school at First Baptist. Then they'd pick me up, and I'd go to the Episcopal Church for church, whatever. But it was a place for me to go to belong and to be with other kids in a relatively safe, in nurturing environment. Now, let me take it one little bit further. When I was there in their programs, what brought me there was I found out they had ping pong tables and a pool table. They had a couple pool tables. So that brought me in right away, because you say shoot pool, I'm there. You say competition, I'm there.
I know you shoot. Do you shoot pool?
I used to shoot a lot. My eyesight is not as good as it used to be, and I haven't shot in a while, but I'd love to. If I had a place to go, I would.
We got to shoot pool. I was shooting pool at 8 years old. My dad used to. Let me tell you something, a funny story. Don't tell anybody I said this. While we're on the podcast.
Don't tell anybody I said this.
So I was about 8, 9 years old. I lived in New York City at the time. My dad and I lived in New York City, and we lived in the Bronx, or he lived in the Bronx. He and my mom had split then, but I got to stay with my dad for the weekend. And he loved to shoot pool. So we would go to a pool hall in the daytime that was a bar at night with those tight pocket. Do you remember those tight pocket pool tables? Real tight pocket pool tables. And he would teach me how to shoot. So I was pretty good. I was really good, actually, to be so young. So we would shoot pool, and then there was this guy. He came up, and he started yelling at my dad. You need to get this kid off the table so grown people could
play.
My dad said, you know how it goes. My dad took all his quarters up off him, and it took a quarter to play. He said, beat him.
You win the table, it's yours.
So the dude put his quarter in. My dad said, well, before you shoot, let's make it interesting. If he wins, you buy me a Heineken. That's what my dad did, Heineken. He said, if you win, I'll buy you whatever you drink. My dad, I literally had to carry my dad Yeah, I must have beat that guy so he got tired of getting. Yeah, so I still shoot from time to
Uh-huh.
time, but I haven't shot in
Well,
a
I hate
so
to
let me shoot
admit,
pool.
I learned to shoot at First Baptist and the Y, and then I perfected my game as an underage person at the Welding Works here in
So you
Columbus.
understand. You understand.
Yeah,
Hey, I have a pool table at the church. You have to come by. It's in one of our
let
rooms.
me
You gotta
know.
come
I'm
by and
ready.
shoot
Let's
sometime.
go. I'm ready.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
I need to polish off my skills. Let's do it. Let's go.
Let's do
Okay.
it. Let's make it happen. I'm sorry. Now that was a bird hole. I took you down. Now what we got?
All right. So let me go back to what I was saying about the church. I went to the church, learned, I shot pool. The youth leader would come in every now and then to shoot pool with us. We had adults in and out who were married couples, college students. There was a large college involvement, and it was a community. Some of us were well liked, some of us were not. Some of us had little groups because it's kids. Any given
Right.
time on a Wednesday night or a Sunday night, there might be 50 kids there. There might be 20. And
Love it.
and we had a space that was adult supervised and there were rules, but the payback was I got involved with the choir. I like to sing. They didn't necessarily like some of the lyrics I'd sing, but that was okay. I taught them lyrics that I made up to certain old hymns that probably didn't go over well, but that's okay.
I
We
could never imagine it.
we went to I played the bass for the band.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
but I also was playing bass with anyway. So we were doing things right, and the I played bell. I had played handbells. There was something for everybody. We played a lot of kickball. We played a lot of stuff. But the one thing that we were taught was that there was an expectation that we would give back to the community. Now, some kids we would go on retreats, and I perfected my spades and heart game on retreats because I do love a card game.
Don't go there. I have to prove. I have to pull a race card if you start talking about spades.
Oh, good, but it's a great card game. It's called.
It's a great card game. It's a great card game.
But the payback was we were expected to come and participate in backyard vacation Bible school. We would go in we had aged out of our own vacation Bible school, so we were expected as preteens and teenagers to go out in the community. And I used to always go to Sandfield and then over there on South Side because I lived on South Side. So we would go out. They had kids out in East Columbus. They had kids out in North Haven Woods. They had Bell Avenue. There were all these.
That you had to play spades in Sandfield. That's the spot.
And that's where I played some of the best card games ever. But that's out in the Sandfield Cemetery. But there was a group of us that used to go out there and play essentially t-ball and kickball. And we would alternate between Sandfield and demonstration school playground. But the point of what we did was every kid who in the summertime were expected to participate in these vacation Bible schools. And if you were a sports kid, then you were put in charge of coming up with the games for the kids that week. If you were a reader, then you did this. I was always tasked with creating puppet stories because I'm a storyteller. And there was paper bag art. There was something, and we went into those communities and we shared who we were. We also shared our religious part, but we got to know people in our community. Everybody, rich, poor, white, black, it didn't matter because we were in all the neighborhoods, but we were expected to do that.
I think that is so key. So when I think about this whole thing for me, this whole race for me, right? There are a couple of things that are important to me in this race, this mayor's race. One of them is recapturing what you just said, a commitment to building strong communities, right? And it starts with people talking to each other, people socializing in a non-threatening environment, right? In the day of social media, you basically can say whatever you want to say to whoever you want to say it to with very little fear of harsh retribution. What you'll normally get back is some more choice words, right? But when you're face to face with somebody and you see a person, two things occur. One is you just don't say that. And the second piece is you just don't want to. It's different looking at a screen and words and looking at a person. When you're looking at a person, people, right? And if we could get that social infrastructure that I keep talking about rebuilt to the point where we're doing that on a regular basis. And I think that is a role that the church can play. So if you look at my platform, I have my pillars, my platform, my pillars, and then I have what I call my process. The process will be these things I call rock groups. And one of the rock groups is churches rebuilding our communities. And that's going to be the focus of the churches in the rock group is we need you to bring your tribe back to the community. Think about churches. They're like a bunch of little tribes around the city. And what we need to do is have you plug your tribe into this social infrastructure so that we can rebuild the camaraderie that we have, that we need across tribes.
And I think it's needed. And I agree with you. I don't know how to do it. And it doesn't have to be religious based, but people need to feel valued. People need to be valued or feel valued.
There you go. That's not the narrow strip for this. The thing that the strip of unity for this is not our common religion. It is our common humanity that we bring and our community, the common unity that we're bringing together. You can go back and worship how you worship, but when we come together, let's be dignified, respectable, and respectful human beings to one another, so that when we're walking past each other in the grocery store, we don't feel this sudden threat. I don't feel that around people. I don't feel that.
Yeah, I'm not that way either.
I know people that do, so I'm not discounting that. But I know the reason I don't is because I'm not uncomfortable having a conversation with Shannon. I'm not uncomfortable having a conversation with Keith. I'm not uncomfortable with having a conversation with Stephen Jones or Bill Strauss. None of those conversations bother me. After this race is over, you'll be surprised how much we laugh all the time when we see each other now. We know we're in a race, but that's all. It's just a race. It's not a fight for me. I have things that I'd like to see done when this is over. I'd like to have an opportunity to serve in that capacity to make sure they're done. But that's what this is about for me. And what we have to do is create that thing that make people know we're not against each other. We're not. We're just not. We have to share this space and breathe this air and shop in these grocery stores and eat at these restaurants. And I don't want to feel bad every time I bump into you because of something I said while we were running. We're not going to do that. We're not going to do that.
That brings me to my last question. And
we're running out of time.
I know we're over time, but I'm gonna ask you my last question. My last question is easy. Sure. I want to create a series of town halls online. I want to invite citizens, people in organizations. I found out there's a men's group here called the Men's Cave that want to create mentorship programs.
Just started.
And I want to know if there's a women's group like that for young ladies to have female mentors and role models. I love the history of this town, and you know that. And I love to ask for accountability and transparency. We've talked about that.
Yep. All the time.
And people are very uncomfortable because I demand transparency, and that's okay. What I want to know is, how do we, if you were elected and I create a series of town halls, how do we make that work so it builds community in this town? And you may not have an answer right now because I'm asking you off the cuff.
Actually, we'd have to talk more about what that word means to you, the word town halls. Because I do think that, let me give you a quick diverging and I'll come back real quickly. I believe in mentorship. I absolutely love apprenticeship. I believe in mentorship. Think it has its place. I love apprenticeship because it adds purpose to mentorship. I'm not doing things that I'm not comfortable with. We create that relationship where the pouring occurs because you got a journeyman and you got an apprentice together. Somebody knows what they're doing, but somebody that wants to be just like them when they grow up. It's go ahead. You about to say something?
No, I've watched this in Europe. That's exactly how they teach their blue collar community how to be successful is they are an apprentice under a master electrician, a master plumber, and they eventually work toward being a journeyman, and then they're a journeyman for a long time, and then they achieve master status, and
Mastery.
master status
Absolutely.
includes they must apprentice others under them. It's
Say it again. I love it.
it's
I
that,
love.
but
So
it's
I
that
said I
whole
like.
idea of it's an expectation from the community that you give back.
I love it. Now, normally that concept is applied to just physical skills like electrician, plumber, brick mason, those kind of things. But I think that concept can be applied to a variety of skills like nonprofit management, small business development. So when I think about my rock group, so what I want to create in terms of rock groups, I want town halls, but I want them to be apprentice style, right? So let's say we got nonprofits in training or nonprofits that have just started up. You got a person with a lot of passion. They see something that needs to be fixed, but they don't have the systems in place to really run a nonprofit. They don't have the skills to run a nonprofit. So they have a lot of passion, not a lot of resources, because the resources go to the people that have the skills, have the capacity, and have the plan. So I want to create the master, journeyman, apprentice kind of relationship with small businesses, nonprofits, churches, those kind of things. So those rock groups are built on those scales. Now, let's think about these two in particular because I love them. Small businesses, nonprofits. I love those two groups because those are the groups that help people who fail to launch. You understand what I'm saying? Let's say we got a person that went to prison, come out of prison. If we have a solid nonprofit network together, we can get them back into society. If we have a good small business network together, we can give them a job that will pay them a living wage. And a job is what they need to keep them from going to prison. A good job and a well-meaning job. So when I think about how do we make those town halls work, which was your question, I'm coming back now. The way I think we can make them work is we create networks so that it's not everybody in the town hall talking about everything. We create networks where for this one, we're talking about nonprofit
Correct.
advocacy. And we're talking about the things that are specific to them. And in this one, we're talking about small business development. And we're talking about the things that are specific to them. In this one, we're talking about how the churches can play a role in developing our social infrastructure. So those are not just everybody doing free-for-alls.
Yeah.
Let's talk about how you help rebuild our communities.
So more of a panel style town hall.
Absolutely. And here's where it gets really good, I think. Let's say we got a nonprofit A that has been around for 10 years and has managed millions of dollars, right? They can be the ones to write those umbrella grants and pull in these other nonprofits and pay them to do specific work in the grant. So they re-grant to the smaller nonprofits, which give them the ability to manage some funds, but they're not totally responsible because the umbrella organization is the fiscal agent. Mm-hmm. And what that does is that strengthens the nonprofits. They get a chance to see what good financial systems look like. They get a chance to really create a plan. And they are accountable to the overarching nonprofit who's accountable to whoever the funder was. So when we talk about doing town halls that kind of way, I plan on doing those on a regular basis. And in addition to that, doing small group meetings with leaders in those sectors to set the direction for the city in those areas. So when you ask me, how am I going to do this? I'm going to get as many people involved as I can in an organized way in areas that matter to them. Yeah. And we'll rebuild that way.
Darren, I've kept you far longer than I said I would. It was an hour and 22 minutes. I feel blessed that you wanted to come on my podcast and you wanted to talk about your dreams. I know you and I can talk for hours. I am coming over. When is convenient for me to come shoot pool? We'll talk about that offline.
Yeah,
And
that's exactly
and
right. Let's do that.
we need in Germany they call it shovels, but we need some card games in this town for fun. We need some adults to play. I don't bet. I'm not a gambler, and I'm not a. I really want to find ways to build community in this town, and I know people think I'm crazy because the history of this town matters, and the future of this town matters. And
I agree.
I appreciate you. One, it's a brave person who runs for office in this day and age.
I've heard it called some other things.
Yeah,
We'll go with
or a
brave.
fool, but I don't know.
We'll go with brave.
I go with brave. I like that you are transparent and forthright, and I appreciate
Try
that.
to be.
I will be speaking to Stephen Jones. As I said, I have a panel, I'm going to ask him the same questions I ask you. And the only thing that may change might be the follow on questions based on the responses, of course. Again, I
Understood.
have offered it to Bill Strauss. He's still invited if he wants to be here, but he has decided not to, and that's his prerogative. But we'd love to hear the same types of answers from questions that I have asked you. Do you have any questions for me before we close?
No, nothing at all. Not. I do want to say something. I have a statement. One is I appreciate you taking out the time to invite me onto your podcast. You don't have to do that. And just to let you know, one of my fundamental core values is to earn the right before you get the job. So when I was in corporate America and I was going to promote a person from one level to the next, they had to demonstrate capability on that the next level before I would promote them. They didn't have to demonstrate mastery at the next level, but they did have to demonstrate capability at the next level before I would promote them. And so one of the things that I think is important as a leader in a position as important as the mayor is that we're not afraid to talk to the people who we serve. Some of them are going to be easy conversations. Some of them we're going to have to deal with the fact that they're really frustrated with things that are going on. And we're going to have to wade through their frustration before we can actually start talking about the questions and the solution. But I believe that's a part of the job. So for this run, I've made up my mind that I will not dodge any questions, any comments, anybody. And I won't just do them on a podcast. We'll do them on a Facebook Live. So it's no way for me to go back and edit something I may have messed up. I'll do it without fear because one, I know I'm not perfect. I'll make mistakes. I know I'm not perfect, but I don't mind talking about what we need to do better, right? So I don't just value initiative and ability to take feedback. I try to show initiative and I try to take feedback. Information informs how I feel about things, right? To talk to you about something that is really important to you, and I go in it with one level of thinking, and you bring all these new ideas, and I come out and it hasn't affected me at all, you could have saved your breath. I'm not that guy. It doesn't mean I'll always act exactly like you want to, but what you tell me will inform how I think about stuff. I'll add that to the mix. And because I'm an engineer and a problem solver and a puzzle doer, I do puzzles for fun. I'm always looking for how do we put all these things together in a way that makes sense for as many people as possible. So that's why I don't dodge these. I am using this to gather information to inform what kind of mayor I will be. So thank you for this opportunity.
And I'm going to close with two statements.
Sure.
And my two statements are we will not be editing this. I don't think we even have to edit for technical stuff because I don't think we had any glitches with technology. Sometimes that happens with our internet in our weather in this community. And we're certainly not editing out any answers or any commentary because we agreed to that beforehand. I want to thank you for coming on Tombigbee Tales. Until next time.